from their perspective, and this is something that goes to a society where they don't recognize a division between political authority and spiritual life. If where you're coming from is your core tenet is that Allah gave humankind Sharia as his gift, as his blueprint for how a dignified human life is to be lived. And anybody who turns their nose up at Allah's gift is committing a grievous offense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to us, that may seem like to a lot of people in the West, an antiquated way of looking at the world. They think that they've evolved beyond that. But if you were born that way, and that was your frame of reference, and it was the way that you had lived your life, it was what you were attached to, it was what you were loyal to, it was the way that you grew up taught, it was the prism that you were taught to view the world through. You're going to resent somebody coming over and telling you, Allah has it wrong, and let's us show you how it's done.
I feel like that's the way with any kind of religion. When you just,
Well,
or ideologies that kind of connect to religion.
I think the reason this is different, especially for us,
Mm-hmm.
is really this idea of no division between the spiritual and the political.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're living in a society where you do recognize a separation between church and state, then your spiritual life accepts the fact that there are political developments and evolutions which may be outside the sphere of what your religion teaches you. And if you're also, if the basis of your religion is tolerance and trying to become a better person because you're striving for the next life, it's not the same as a religion, a mainstream ideology of which is a conquest ideology that understands itself to be under a divine injunction to rule and to conquer anybody who doesn't see it your way. It's not necessarily violent conquest, but it's very much an idea that your belief system supersedes everything that's gone before. So it is a different way of
Yeah, I
looking
can see
at
that.
Because if you're extreme in Islam, you're extreme on the political side as well as the spiritual side.
Yeah. It'd be hard. That's a hard problem.
Real hard problem.
I think that's why we have so many problems. So I wanted to ask, why did you choose this career path? Why do you work to stop terrorism and terrorists?
Well, I guess because I was, I had a very fortunate career as a lawyer. I started out as any prosecutor does, doing ordinary run-of-the-mill cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to work on some pretty neat cases. I worked on, I did a case in the 1980s called the Pizza Connection case, which is still the longest federal criminal trial of all time. It was 17 months. And it was at the time, it was an amazing case. And it was an amazing time to be in the U.S. Attorney's Office because Rudy Giuliani was our U.S. Attorney, and we had cases against all of the 5 families of the mafia, which had been an entrenched problem, particularly in the New York area, but also nationally. And no one ever thought that the mafia's back would be broken. And we broke it. There were big Wall Street prosecutions at the same time. The New York office, as we always call it, the Sovereign District of New York, it's actually the Southern District of New York. We have Wall Street. We have the mafia. We have it's the crime capital of the world. We should brag about that, right?
If you're a lawyer.
If you're a lawyer, that's exactly the point. If you're a lawyer, it's the best place on the planet to work. And then, when the World Trade Center was bombed in 1993, we really didn't have experience in the country coping with systematic international terrorism. So we didn't really have, if you get a big money laundering case comes into the office, or a big organized crime case comes into the office, you got a little paradigm on the shelf that you can take out. And this is how we do these cases. We didn't have that for international terrorism. And I guess because I had done international racketeering cases, so those are like big transcontinental sometimes enterprises, I had as close an analog as we had to what we thought we were dealing with. And only when you get in it do you realize that it's very different. But there was, to me, the feeling was that I wasn't doing normal lawyer work. I was actually doing something for the country. I was doing something that was important in a way that, not that the other stuff wasn't important, it was very important, but this was important in a much different way. And you come to appreciate, even if you don't understand it at the beginning, that there's a big difference between how you enforce the law and how you do national security. And I had to learn that the hard way in a lot of ways, because when you're a lawyer, and particularly when you get the big case in the country, you think there's nothing in the planet more important than your case. And then I would have to talk to people in the intelligence community, and I'd say, I need you to tell me what you know so I can prepare for my great big trial up in the hot lights of New York. And they'd be like, who are you? And I came to understand that I wanted the information because I needed to convict the 12 people we had under indictment. They needed to protect the information because it was saving lives, that it was life and death, And I had to get over the hump with them, that I understood that this wasn't just about a case. This was about protecting the country, and trying to get policy right, trying to protect national secrets in a way that would allow us to protect Americans. And then you realize that there are situations where they have information that could blow my case in a good way, just blow the defense up entirely. But you really can't use it, because if we take that intelligence operation, if we prove it in court, we have to reveal it to the defense. If we pull somebody who's an intelligence operative out of what he's doing, gathering information, let's say you have somebody who is an undercover operative who you've managed to infiltrate into the inner sanctums of a jihadist organization. Well, you can make a case against a handful of people that he can give you information about, or you can leave him there and have a read on what they're planning to blow up next and who they're planning to kill next. So over time, you come to realize that it's not about winning cases, even though winning cases is important because you neutralize terrorists and you prevent them from doing terrible things. But you always have to balance what's best for the United States. And that's not always convicting people, oddly enough. And that's something that, as a lawyer, that's a foreign concept. As a prosecutor in particular, that's a hard one to get over. But once you do get over it, then you realize how crazy it is to use the criminal justice system as your main counterterrorism weapon, because it can't work. It's not designed for that.
Yeah, I like that, especially coming from the lawyer standpoint. That your whole purpose is to help these cases, but for the good of the United States.
But you asked me about career path, and that's why I was telling somebody about this earlier today when we were having a bite to eat. In a lot of ways, I think I'm really lucky now that I'm in journalism. I'm still in trouble thinking, I'm a lawyer. I don't think of myself as a journalist, but I guess I've been a journalist for so long now. I'm a journalist. But I think, in a lot of ways, I'm lucky to have had a trial lawyer background rather than a journalist background, because a trial lawyer's job is to try to break down sometimes very complicated things so that everyday people can understand them. And also to try to get in the shoes and in the mind of people in the jury to understand what they must think of the weaknesses of your case so that you can try to shore them up. So in other words, it's kind of a profession where if you fall in love with your own pieties and you fall in love with your own theories attorneys and you fall in love with your own case, you're really doing yourself and the people you represent, in this case the United States, because that's what a federal prosecutor represents, you're doing them a real disservice. You have to develop the skill of trying to figure out how the other guy thinks, even if you disagree intensely with the other guy. And you know, there's a lot of good things about journalism, but that ain't one of them. And by and large, there's a lot of, you know, people do fall in love with their own theories and their own ways of looking at things. And there's a lot of talking past each other instead of grappling with things that are important.
So what would you say to someone, like a student or someone who's considering going into what you're doing?
Get a good basic education. You know, I get people all the time saying, you know, I want to go to law school, I want to do some pre-law stuff. And from my perspective, and this may be my bias, is you know, on the math and science versus the humanities continuum, I've always been on the wrong side of that. But I do think, I do tell people, you know, forget all this other stuff that they gear you for law school with, or at least they think they do. If you want to have the skills that you need, is read the classics, read philosophy, read things that challenge your premises, learn why you think what you think, learn to try to get the math and science side, which is crucially important actually, but learn how to get from A to B to C in a linear way, because people aren't, what you ultimately find when you're proving even big cases, what convinces people to go your way in big cases tend to be the small things, because that's how common sense people look at problems. They don't look at like the result that you want them to see. They actually want to see how you got there. And it's still a great system where, you know, we have all these trained experts in every field. But what do we do with the most important decisions that have to be made in society? We leave them to 12 members of the community. And if you're lucky, you don't have a lawyer on the jury. But we still, you know, we give the lawyers all the opportunity to call on whatever experts they think will help them explain the case to the jury. But in the end, we leave it to the community to decide it. So you can never get removed from how the community thinks, and you can never get too far away from how they feel about things. And the best way to prepare for that, I think, is to not specialize in a specialty. Get a decent education, learn how to think.
I feel like that's important, especially with looking at foreign policy too. Looking and seeing, you know, these are people. You know, this isn't just some law. You know, it gonna affect people. It's gonna affect people of Islam faith in America. It's gonna affect them wherever we send troops. So.
It's a crucial point actually, because when you get outside of a political community, what you find is that efforts to impose law are generally illusory, and the world is really political, it's not legal. What you get, in a lot of ways, our own community is that way, but certainly once you get into the international stage, it's really not about, you know, if some country cheats us in a way, or threatens us in a way, or does something untoward to us, you don't haul them into court. I mean, I know they have a world court and they think they're actually doing law there, but you know, that's not the way, day to day, the way international relations works. It's politics, and it's sitting down with people, and it's trying to reason your way through things. And you can never be divorced in that calculus from the fact that there is a forcible component to it. A rogue state gets the attention that it gets because it's a rogue, because it's apt to do something crazy. If you don't either show it that would be a very dopey thing to do, or if you appease it. So that's always a part of it. But it's got very little to do with law. It's got much more to do with you know, just how people relate to each other under circumstances where there really is no law except what we can impose in the way of stability.